So, welcome to this episode of
Mm.
Women in Rugby League Pioneering Years. And it's my pleasure to have on today's episode someone who I've known for a long, long time, actually, who's been
Mm.
involved as a player and a match official and just wants to we just want to hear about her journey and her passion for the
Mm.
sport, which has been over so many years, and
Mm.
also her challenges. So, welcome, Lindsay.
Hello, Julia. How are you? You
I'm
okay
all
as well?
right.
Yeah.
I'm really, really good, thank you.
Mm.
So let's start from the beginning. How did you
Mm.
get involved in? Tell us about your early days in rugby league and how you actually
Um,
got involved.
yes. Well, my dad played amateur rugby league in Bradford.
Who did he
So
play for?
he played for like the old teams like South Bradford. He played at Wyke. Um, he's played a few like local cup finals at like Dudley Hills ground, like the Neil Hunt Memorial Ground and
Yeah,
things like that as well. And I think at one point, I think he was good enough to be in the old Colts team, at the old Bradford Northern team, which is the predecessor team to Bradford
yeah.
Bulls. But that's going back in the 70s and things. But I think my serious involvement with rugby league started with watching it on the TV, as well as like seeing my dad play and that as well. It's like watching like Saturday afternoons on the BBC, like the Challenge Cups, things like that as
The
well.
Eddie
Seeing
Waring.
not Eddie Waring, I'm too young for Eddie Waring, Julie. I'm 43. Look, just like Ray Wench and all that. That's who I grew up watching as a
Yeah.
rugby league commentator and things. Then Sky coming on board in the early 90s as well. And so I grew up watching like legends at like in the games such as like Jonathan Davis, Martin Offiah, Paul Newlove, Cal Fairbank, Ellery Hanley, all those legends watching and playing. And I just felt inspired by them because they were so good, such good players, and they were fantastic players, and just I was just I showed admiration for like the skill and the fitness that they had even for their time as well. And this was when I was about 8 year old when I first started watching, which was 89, and that because like Widnes were really dominant in the
Mm.
game at the time, beating Canberra and teams like that, and then Wigan was starting their dominance and things like winning literally everything as well. And in some ways, a lot of the fans, not just in that admiration, but also envious because of how dominant they were as well. And at the time, there was hardly any, if any, girls' teams and stuff. But then around 93 and onwards, I really appreciated the game more when we started to watch the old Bradford Northern team, as you know, is the predecessor team to Bradford Bulls.
Mm.
And that's when I admired your likes like your Fairbanks, your New Loves, and all those players. And then it got to 97, and there was the suggestion of a not just a women's but a girls team. I was 16 at the time, and it was Bob Jowett who was involved in the early days of women's rugby league, who coached me, and then my sister as well, who's like 2.5 years younger than me as well. So I played with the likes of like ex-internationals such as like Kirsten Maroney. I got into and players like Lisa McIntosh, Chantal Patrick. They were like the standard bearers in the game at the time as well, like Mandy Green as well. She was at Dudley Hill at the time, and that as well. And then some of those lasses went on to like, play for Dudley Hill, then Bradford Thunderbirds, then amalgamating into Bradford Bulls and things like that. And then one of my big regrets was like having time out from the game in the late 90s, because obviously with my A levels and then going to do my undergraduate degree, which at the time didn't have rugby league for girls and women and stuff. And then it was only when I moved to Halifax in 2006 that I got involved, ironically enough, in rugby union, and that was Halifax Vandals. And then unfortunately they folded and things. So I got back involved in league, and that because they played league for like a summer season, did Vandals, but then I played for a bit at Huddersfield as well, which was at Slough Saracens. And that, I mean, I admit I was a bit unsettled there. So, and then in the end up, I went to Siddle, which is where I finished my playing days. That's I played alongside Amy Hardcastle and Shona Hoyle, and that in their early days and stuff. And but I think I knew, well, like Shona and Amy, they had massive potential to be the English internationals who are now seasons internationals as they are. But I think that's where I started. Around that time, I started my love of refereeing because, as you appreciate, we were all armchair supporters on the touchline, thinking we could do a better job than the referees that we had. But then I did my course, my 13-side course at the time at Castleford Tigers back in 2009. And believe you me, it has changed my perception of the game massively. And since then, I have had so much respect for referees and match officials because you're in the middle, you're trying to see what happens in the game and stuff as well. And but I think what actually sped up my time more as a referee was a knee injury when I played at Sigil. And that because I just simply went into a tackle, my knee popped, and I screamed as loud as as you could never imagine. Because I mean, I've rarely been injured as a player, but then when I did some of my knee ligaments and stuff, my medials, and that I felt pain like you never felt like it, and that, and then I was going to probably have one more season, but then that then made me think I'm going to go for refereeing, but then Siddle folded, unfortunately, because of various circumstances, which I won't talk about. But it came at the right time for me, and that's how I got into refereeing and stuff. Also, sort of like all over. I've had the opportunity to go all over the country and stuff to referee, and but also as well, I've had opportunities as a graded referee. Well, touch judge, I should say, an official and everything. Then when I have Freya, my daughter, who's 9, I had to like put some things on the back burner and stuff like that. But I've still kept my toe within the game as well, like especially with like the laws that are coming with the tackle height and things. And but I think the big change for me when I first started getting involved in the sport as a spectator was the change from winter to summer and the players going full time, and that as well, the advent of Super League and things like that. And I think in some ways, I feel the law changes in the game over my time have been for the greater good, especially with like issues with concussion, um, consequential injuries such as like brain trauma and things like that. And but the game has changed massively since I started because we've seen more variations of the sport, not just with men, but also with women. But that has taken off massively. And I've felt fortunate to be part of that because I've touched judging the Women's Super League prior to the changes were like being graded and stuff like that. And but seeing that evolution and women's sport being taken more seriously as well, and also seeing like wheelchair rugby, but also um more tag rugby, more PDRL, and more learning disabilities variations. So the sport, I feel, has been at the forefront of being inclusive as well. And but also it's looking at ways in which it can improve not just the excitement of the fans, but also to include people to play, include people to be officials and things like that as well. And but I've also had time out not just with having Freya, my daughter, but also with COVID restrictions and stuff as well. But also my mum was diagnosed with cancer back in November 2022. So I had time out there because at the end of the day, it's just that I had to prioritise my mental health and things as well. And I think this season gone has been one of the best seasons I've had in a very long time as well. Because another opportunity I had prior to my pregnancy and having Freya was being involved in the Festival of World Cups. So that gave me opportunity to be involved in like the women's game, but also the student game as well, because I've been a reserve for those fixtures as well. And but I also being graded as well, it gave me the opportunity to be involved in the Challenge Cup as well.
Yeah, just
Um,
before we
mm,
a lot of people won't
yeah,
understand about graded in the refereeing world. I mean,
yes,
we're in the refereeing world. So
yeah,
basically what happens, isn't it? You
mm,
start off, you do a laws of the game exam
yeah,
and you do a course in the laws of the game,
yes,
and then you officiate and get assessed, don't you, locally. Um,
yeah,
and then you move
mm,
to there's Yorkshire camps and Northwest
Yeah.
camps, and there was one down
Mm,
south as well, where you can sort of turn up for training and
yeah.
work towards being graded, which means another exam, doesn't it? And a fitness test. Is that right
Yeah,
still?
it's the yo-yo test and that. And then this year they also incorporating an exam as well.
Mm,
I've I think due to my circumstances, I, I'm not gone for graded status, but I do understand the environment about being graded as well prior to having Freya
mm,
as well. And it used to be the old Cooper run where you did the 12-minute run on an athletics track. And then since I think it's 2012, they've done a yo-yo test
hmm
as well. And but it does push you to be as good as possible with your fitness as well as your refereeing as well, I
mm,
think, as well. But also because of the nature of the sport, you still have to keep yourself fit as well. Because even in the juniors game now, I think as well, players are getting fitter as well. And also with the tackle height, they have to be more fit because knowing where to like tackle below the armpit as well,
hmm
because like quite often a lot of high tackles I've seen since the new laws have come in have been because players are not just still getting used to the new laws, but also because of tiredness and things and thinking about that initial contacts and things as well.
mm.
And I think it's going to be incorporated a lot more next season with the professional game
It is,
as
isn't it?
well.
Yeah. Interestingly, as well, just about the
Mm,
rugby league communities, because this is
yes,
about the communities and the
mm,
support you get. People don't realise that there's a refereeing community, isn't there? A really
yes, there is.
supportive, sometimes tough environment to be in,
Yeah,
but
it's
actually,
competitive, but healthy competition in
yeah, yeah. So tell
mm,
us a bit more about the societies you've been in and about, the different training you've been involved with and
yeah.
support that you've received. That'd be really interesting.
I'm currently with Huddersfield, and I started off with Halifax, and then after having Freya, I mean, things changed a little bit with the societies, and I then went to Huddersfield as well. And I think there's a lot of like theory as well as practice as well. And one thing I've found is that's improved my game as well is the incorporation of the tackle ID. Not how you hear referees shout one, move and surrender, dominance and held release and stuff. So for me, as someone who's also neurodivergent, it's a very structured sport as well as rugby league for a referee because you get to know the tackle ID as well. And I'm in some ways proud that I'm seeing more players who are coming out as neurodivergent so I can incorporate my own knowledge as a referee to the players. Because in
Mm,
what I've also learned as well is you're coaching the players how to play the sport and use the laws, especially with the laws that have come in this season just gone as well. But also with the physical side of things as well, like practical, I should say, my beg your pardon. But also like looking at like scenarios, like say how you would touch judge in a particular situations, like if you get, for example, like how you should get close to the ruck, like say if you're 20 meters infield and stuff as well, and how you talk to the players and stuff like that. But I think what I found as a touch is players do appreciate you talking to them and stuff like that and talking them out of penalties and things like that as well. And also when you look at like your scenarios on in society meetings and stuff as well, you're learning from other colleagues as well. And I think it's the appreciation that people are not having a go at you, they're being constructive with them how you should go about things and stuff. And I think what's also good as well is reviewing your games. I think what's more important since using headcams this season as well, especially for me, it's been a massive learning curve because I can look at my own game and stuff as well. And what I've found is if you've made any 50-50 calls that are borderline and you go with your gut instincts, I've looked back at my um headcam footage and I've been proven right as well with a lot of my decisions and stuff like that as well. So I think it's good that we've got not just technology, but also colleagues to back you up in various situations. Because I think, but I also found like after the first season, after the COVID restrictions were lifted and that as well, if all was happened to you on the pitch and stuff like that as well, people from like even high up as like people like Ben Clay, like who have even asked me, "Are you all right?" after a game, and I do appreciate calls like that because they're looking out for you as well. Because regardless of what their status is, they're looking out for every single referee and stuff like that as well. I mean, I'm of the experience now whereby I'm more resilient because of difficult situations, um, but it brings a lot of transferable skills in my day-to-day job as well, because I deal with some quite complex cases with students as well, and I've dealt with some complex situations on a rugby pitch as well, and a lot of that is fast arising as well. So it's just about being proactive and being on the ball about situations as well. And I've also had retired officials that have like come to watch me at games and stuff, and we've always had I've chatted in the clubhouse afterwards and things. But that's what I like about the community game as well. I might have made a seemingly controversial decision, but I am always welcomed in a clubhouse afterwards, and they do ask me why I've made this decision and things like that as well. And I think for me, it's always polite to go into a clubhouse after a game just to show the players and the officials that you are human as well, that you do care about the game and that as well. But I find it rewarding as well as a referee seeing particularly like a junior or an open age player that may make it big, let's say in like Super League in the future or in the Women's Super League as well, which I've seen in the past where I've read that player and they've gone on to big things. And that's rewarding for me because they've progressed and things as well. So that's what I found with the refereeing community. It's that, and but also as well, I find we're a family in rugby league as well. It's whoever has any um like issues going on and that as well. We are really good at putting our allegiances to one side and we look out for each other. So that's what I like about the sport in general.
Mm. And I know you have had your challenges, haven't you?
Mm.
But you've always managed to come through them and out
Yeah,
the other side and
yeah,
succeed, which is fabulous.
yeah. It's been difficult to prove people wrong, but I think it's just I just say to anybody, just never give up basically and that as well. And it can be hard at first striking a balance, but you do get there and things as well. And but people are there to like help you and stuff like that as well. Um but it's like you say with refereeing, I know people appreciate Amanda say, oh, I couldn't do that. But the thing is as well, I just think just give it a go, pure and simple. And but at the end of the day, ultimately you have to look after yourself and that as well. But I think the key thing is if you want it, you just go for it. I just say that to anybody and that as well, just go for it and that
Mm.
listen to the people around you because they're there to help you and that as well.
And you've
Um,
been a champion, haven't you, of neurodiversity with
yes,
your own.
absolutely.
And I think when you look at officiating, and you've already said this, that actually
Mm,
it's really suited for a neurodiverse person because there's
mm,
guidelines, there's ways that you
yeah,
need to do things, there's it's quite structured, isn't it,
yes, it
officiating?
is. Is
Um,
that what I would say to referees is if you've got a player who's come out as neurodivergent, there's ways in which we can like support them, like on the pitch, like say if you have to have if you have to have a word with a player, like say particularly if they're autistic, don't expect them to use eye contact. I think the key thing is you should expect them to listen because in the past whereby people say if you don't use eye contact, you're rude and you're not listening. But sometimes with someone who's neurodivergent, they don't use eye contact because they find it quite painful,
mm,
physically painful. Like say the way I can describe it is it's very similar to eye strain. If you don't wear glasses for such a long time, you have to wear glasses, and you may find it's more anxiety inducing. So the key thing is when you speak to a player who's neurodivergent, if you have to have a word with them for various reasons, as long as they're under, as long as you're direct with the way you communicate and if you're satisfied that they're listening, that's the main thing, and that as well. Because it's just that I've had parents and coaches say to me like, this player's got this condition and stuff. So it makes me think how I should communicate with the player, be more, and this makes me think about being more direct with the player, not being, and also not being ambiguous and things, because like sometimes people might want to give a commentary and that, but when you referee, you need to be direct and say why you've called them and that. And I found my style of being direct with players does work
Mm.
and that as well. So I think that's why I think it's good with getting, but I think also as well, neurodivergent players have strengths in the game, because I think rugby helps them be part of that community, but also as well, it helps with like their anxiety levels, and rugby might be a strength for them because they like the sport, and
Mm.
because and I'm going away from rugby league now, but you see one of the Stoltman brothers from World's Strongest Man, one of them is on the autistic spectrum, and he's been World's Strongest Man I think twice, and I think a lot of his strengths are to do with his autism
Mm.
as well. So in some ways they can be successful in that way, but I think the key thing is that they listen constructively to their coaches and to their fellow teammates as well. So it's just one of those things and stuff as well. And but I think as well for me, what I've learned is as long as you work with your coaches, your fellow players, and the officials and stuff, then you can't go wrong, as far as I'm concerned, as
Mm.
well.
Yeah, and I think you've been proving that can
Yeah.
work. So when you begin to look back at
Mm,
obviously your starting days of a player,
mm,
and that was very much in the early days in the 90s
mm,
when Women's Rugby League, I've just been
mm.
looking at all the stats and things like that, and the sort of early 90s is when it rose in teams and actually maintained
Yes.
for quite a lot of years the number
Mm,
of teams in there and the different clubs you've been involved with, and then
mm,
taking up officiating. What do you
mm.
think you look back with, your proudest achievements?
I think my parents' achievements been more as a referee, because I've achieved more. I wasn't the best player in the world, but I always tried. But I knew I didn't set the world alight as a player. But as a referee, being involved in the festivals of World Cups back in 2013, so like being involved with like the student fixtures, but also the women's fixtures at the time, because things were starting to like build with the women's game
Mhm.
as well. And this season just gone in 2024, I think the season just gone, I think has been my one of my best seasons in a very long time. To get two men's open age semi-finals in the amateur game, especially the National Conference League or NCL as we call it, or the Yorkshire Men's, is massive, because in my 14 seasons as an official, I have never had a semi-final at that stage in the season, and that as well. And to get those fixtures at the end of the season has been massive as well. And to be honest, I wasn't just shocked, I was quite delighted to get those fixtures at the end of this season. But to me, I say to anybody, if you get an opportunity to be involved in a big end of season fixture or an international, or like that, regardless whether it's at the amateur slash community or professional game, you simply take it. It's an absolute no-brainer, in my opinion,
Mm.
and that as well.
Absolutely. Well, you've
Mm,
worked hard for it, haven't you?
yeah.
Absolutely worked hard for it.
Mm,
Is there anything we've missed out? I'm very aware that um, you've had sort of a varied
yeah.
involvement in rugby league. Is there
Yeah.
anything we've missed out that you'd love to tell everybody about?
Hmm. I think I think we've covered everything, and that we can go on all day,
I
can't we?
know we could. Lindsay,
But
thank you.
there was one thing I will say is um regardless of your ability and everything, there's always opportunities out there. I think it's just that you've got to like keep going at it. That's all I say to anybody
Yeah.
as well.
And you're very much proof of that. Lindsay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you for
you
your
for
time as well.
spend
Yeah.
no, thank you for spending this time. And thank you for all that you give to the sport. And I know you give
Mm,
back a hell of a lot,
mm,
in particularly in the officiating world,
mm,
um and you help younger officials coming through as
Mm,
well as yourself, as well as more female officials. Thank
mm,
you for what you've given us and for your honesty and truth that you
yeah.
tell, which is
Mm,
just so important, and champion neurodiversity, which I think
mm,
is just such a it's on topic at the moment, but actually it's
yes, it is.
something that we need to talk about and
Mm,
actually be able to help and support people so that they can play the sport that they probably
yeah.
want to, or be involved in the sport that they
Mm,
love. So thank you very much, Lindsay.
yeah, much appreciated, Julia. Thanks for your time as well. Yeah.